Hey guys, it is the Gaming Ronin back again with another Marauder guide. This time we're revisiting Annihilation for the 7.1.1 update. Since the 7.1 update, Annihilation hasn't felt as good for me with the stealth nerf to Blood Fury, and I was actually struggling with it to reach a parse higher than 31k. This led me to look at some other ways to go about their rotation, and I found something that I rather like. For the most part, it is still the same fundamentally as my last guide, but sets up for better cooldowns that allows us to use Berserk and Force Run together more succinctly. I will not be going over my stats in this guide, beyond saying that you want to reach 110% accuracy and a 1.4 alacrity, or a 7.30% to 7.50%. I know right here it doesn't show that, that's because of a visual glitch. We don't actually have 17.95% alacrity. That's wrong. If I have to go modify my dummy to get it correct. But it would be 7.95. I am going a little bit over, but for the most part, you want to be somewhere between 7.30% and 7.50%. Once you achieve that, just put everything else into crit. I am going to be working on a gearing guide soon, which will discuss stats for both 330 and 340 item rating with both purple Augs and gold Augs. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out when that goes live. For our implants, we want to be using Berserker's Call, which helps our bleeds to do more damage during Berserk, as you get a generic 10% damage buff for 10 seconds every time Berserk is activated. For Annihilation, this is more important than the melee damage buff from Fearless Victor. Our second implant is Dispatcher, which helps out our rage building. Its first effect is making our next Vicious Slash or Vicious Throw 100% critically hit after using Dual Saber Throw. Its second effect makes any critically hitting weapon attack generate 1 rage once every 3 seconds. Using the Devastating Vengeance Relic increases the odds that a weapon attack will critically hit and generate the 1 rage for you. Though I highly suggest using Serendipitous Assault and Focused Retribution for Annihilation, as my best parses have come from using those 2 relics. As you can see here, I am using them. You do better with it, but if you are having issues generating rage, you can most definitely use Devastating Vengeance plus Focus Ret, and you will generate a little bit more rage a little more often, because you are your weapon attacks will be critically hitting more often. For tacticals, you want to be using the Spiteful Saber, as it will allow Vicious Slash, Vicious Throw, and Dual Saber Throw to refresh your Rupture bleed, making it so you don't have to use Rupture more than once, so long as you keep refreshing it with one of those three abilities within the Rupture bleed's 9-second tick cooldown. Then, if you need to do some AoE damage, you want to swap off to the Malmoral Mask tactical, which makes Annihilate create an AoE attack anytime it's used on a target that has the Force Run bleed on it. Most of the time you want to be using Spiteful Saber though. For our skill tree, you want to pick Draining Center, as it makes Force Run into a 40k to 53k on average hit anytime you use it while you have Berserk stacks. The other 2 in this line, Critical Bleeds and Juyo Rend, just aren't worth it compared to Draining Center. For your level 27 options, I highly suggest using Predation for most situations. Predation is a 30-second defensive and speed boost for your entire operation group. I also suggest always announce that you're going to use it when you are raiding. Sometimes, people aren't prepared for the sudden boost in speed, and they may overwalk or end up where they really don't want to be. So do make sure that you are letting people know, hey, you're going to be moving a lot faster now. It's very, very important that you do that. Alternatively, you can use Overwhelming Slashes for when you don't need Predation. And there are quite a few fights that you don't need Predation. It turns Ravage into a slight rage builder, so it's useful for when you're having issues building rage. For me personally, I do prefer Predation because it does help out quite a bit. It can get people into positions just that little bit faster and help you through mechanics. Not only that, it is also tied into a defensive option later on in the skill tree, and it also has its own damage reduction in and of itself. So it is technically a 5th defensive ability. For level 39, I personally think the whole line should be either redone or removed. The new ability Force Fracture just is not worth taking, as we don't have a tactical for it. And I know of no one that has made a rotation around it. Some people have tried, I've heard of them trying, but it's just not as good as just using Spiteful Saber and Rupture. Typically, I do have Blood Wave as my primary choice here. Typically, I have Blood Wave active as it does a 10k hit to all targets that have bleeds on them each time we use Rupture, giving us another AoE to use. The targets do need to be within 2 to 3 meters of the primary target to be affected by Blood Wave. If not for our main tactical, I would suggest Rupturing Rage, as it refunds any spent rage that Rupture would use during Berserk, as well as placing a 20% heal debuff or trauma on the target. But that's only useful really in PvP, and what I do suggest, if you're going to PvP, use Rupturing Rage. You do want to put that trauma on players to reduce, their healing as much as you possibly can. Unfortunately, since our Rupture bleed, it should almost always be on a target, the only time that you're really going to get that refunded rage is when you initially use Rupture. Because you're like, sometimes when you are coming back in from doing a mechanic, or there was just a lull in combat, you may not have Berserk ready, so you're just going to use Rupture, and you won't get refunded that rage because you have to use Rupture while Berserk is active to get the refunded rage. This should honestly be reworked to be where Rupture refunds its rage by its ticks during Berserk. So when the dot goes off, you get rage back during Berserk. That would be far more useful than pretty much everything else, anything in this line. This line, in all honesty, is pretty useless. This has the most value because there are a lot of fights where there are just multiple enemies, and so you can get a lot of damage out using this. So typically this is what I almost always have active. This literally doesn't do shit for you because we are pretty much never going to use Rupture during Berserk ever, except for the very start of the rotation, and that's it. So it's helpful for that, kind of. It's 2 rage. It's really not anything to cry about. It's not worth it, and so typically just use Blood Wave. Spread your dots, pop in a Rupture into the rotation. It's fine to put it into your filler, and bam, there you go. 10k damage to everything within 2 to 3 meters. Easy. All right, moving on to the level 43 skill tree. We actually do have some options. You can pretty much use any of these 3, though I primarily suggest Blood Fury as it's a passive damage buff. You don't even have to think about it. It lets your bleeds do anywhere from 1500 to 1600 more damage when you do melee attacks during Berserk, which is pretty good. It was stealth nerfed in 7.1, and I felt it kind of made Annihilation not feel as good, but it is feeling a lot better nowadays. But it does require you being relatively good at managing your fury and your rage. Whereas our next option kind of removes any of our fury building problems and pretty much turns the spec more into a rage management. You still need to manage your fury. It's not going to always just build you up, but essentially Bleeding Center critically hitting with bleed damage builds 2 fury even during Berserk, which is really nice. Because you typically can't build Fury during Berserk. The only way for this spec to do it is with Bleeding Center and Draining Center, as Force Rend now gives an additional 10 Fury, which is pretty solid. My main issue is that it is a damage loss. You will notice that damage loss. However, it does make your timings a lot easier, but you need to really practice in not just popping Berserk right away. That's my biggest problem, because I rarely do use Bleeding Center, and even when this initially came out and I was trying it out, because I had been playing Annihilation for so long and I was so used to just pop Berserk, it's been a really hard habit to break. So if you ever catch me live, you will rarely see me use Bleeding Center. There are fights for sure where you want to take Bleeding Center over Blood Fury, absolutely, because there's just too much downtime to make Blood Fury useful, and you need to quickly build back your Fury. There are definitely fights where you should take this over this. Now, when we got the 7.1.1 patch notes, I was actually really excited to be using Furious Power in 7.1.1 because they unfortunately reiterated the cooldown reduction from 7.1, and so it made it look like they were reducing Furious Power's cooldown to 0, which would pretty much be instantaneous just regain of its stacks, which would have been insane. Because you could essentially use your initial 4 stacks, wait 4 seconds, or if it was just an instantaneous, just get all 4 back immediately, you could keep Furious Power up and running for almost an entire fight. It would have been insane. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. They were just reiterating the 7.1 notes that it was getting a 15-second cooldown reduction, which is really shitty. I was messing around with this in 7.1, and it was kind of nice. It does make your melee attacks hit harder, and you primarily use this on Annihilate, and you'll get anywhere from a 30k hit to a 60k hit, which is really nice to just have that nice burst of damage, and it was nice. But in the long run, when compared to something that's just automatic that you don't even have to think about, Blood Fury is the better of the 2 damage options. And then, of course, take Bleeding Center when you just have downtime. For level 51, you want to be using Steel Self, as it gives you a 3% damage reduction to internal and elemental damage. Additionally, your Bloodthirst, Cloak of Pain, and Predation will also give you a 30% AoE damage reduction, which is really useful, and that's another reason why we want to use Predation, because it is a 30-second just AoE damage reduction. So if you really need it, like it's pretty much a whenever you need it, it's there for you. Cloak of Pain has a minute cooldown, and Bloodthirst has a 5-minute cooldown because it's a raid buff, and so you can't fully rely on these as much as you can Predation to get that AoE reduction. The only time I would suggest not using Steel Self is actually a fight where you kind of want AoE damage reduction, but you can use Interloper on Dash Road, which is the first boss of Scum and Villainy, to pretty much always be able to jump back whenever it knocks you back, and you'll pretty much always be in the fight. Yeah, you're taking damage, but some of our options are going to be helping you to heal more often once we get further up the skill tree, and we do have some damage reduction in of itself, so you can absolutely take Interloper. I've used this numerous times in Nightmare in 7.0 so far, and it's absolutely fine. If your healers are competent enough, which they should be if they're at a Nightmare level, Interloper is absolutely fine to use, and that is like the only time I'm ever going to say don't use Steel Self. For level 64, you have 2 options. You can use Cloak of Retribution, which will let you reduce the cooldown of Cloak of Pain by 3 seconds for every use of Battering Assault or Assault. Also, Cloak of Pain will now build you 1 rage every 2 seconds that you are attacked while it is active. This can help you if you're having rage building issues, but it does require standing in what we generally call stupid or just enemy AoE 99% of the time, as a boss should not be attacking you. A lot of veteran Marauders use this as a cheap rage builder, but it's not fully necessary. It's just nice to have. Your other option is Blood Ward. For Annihilation, this is more of a PvP option, as Blood Ward gives you immunity to stuns and immobilization effects while Saber Ward is active, plus a 3% heal of your maximum health once every second. You can choose either of these options. It's absolutely fine. I'm going to leave it to your prerogative. It really is preference, in all honesty. You probably get a little more mileage out of Cloak of Retribution, but it's not by much. If you know there's a fight where there's a lot of damaging mechanics that come out pretty quickly, take Cloak of Retribution. But if you know that there isn't going to be that many damage mechanics, if at all, go for Blood Ward, as it will just add on to the overall healing that you have available to yourself. Level 68 is kind of just unfortunate because we're never going to choose Force Choke over Mad Dash or Undying Rage. Sadly, we, as Marauders in general, we just no longer have stuns, which can make playing PvP kind of annoying because everyone else pretty much can stun you and you can't stun them, because if you do choose Force Choke over either one of these, you're going to have a bad time. This is a movement, this adds to your mobility and keeping up with enemies that are running away, and this adds to just your general survivability, which either one of these are better than a stun that's only going to last for 4 seconds and you don't have access to for another 50 seconds. This is a 35 seconds, and while this does have a 2-minute 30-second cooldown, it can potentially save your life. I've been playing a little bit of PvP recently, and it's definitely saving me quite a bit. As for PvE, you're going to have to learn which fights you need Mad Dash for and which fights you don't need Mad Dash for. Because when you activate Mad Dash, you do actually gain resist to a lot of damage mechanics, and so it can cancel out death. Like there are little mechanics where they will just kill you. You can use this to cancel that out, which is really, really useful and partially makes your class actually kind of worthwhile to bring into a raid. For anything that you don't need Mad Dash for, you just put on Undying Rage. Now you have a 99% damage reduction for 6 seconds, and again, you can cancel out a lot of damaging mechanics, potentially even death mechanics, by utilizing this. So you need to learn which fights these are. That way you can take the appropriate one. Sometimes, in a single boss, in a single raid, you may be swapping between these boss by boss, such as R4, the first boss, IP, you need Mad Dash, so that way you can cancel out the damage from the big bomb. But then on Watchdog, you want to have Undying Rage because fast movement is really, really frowned upon. You may run into other players and blow each other up, so you definitely want to swap off to Undying Rage. Finally, for level 73, you want Thirst for Rage or Brazen. I used to use Brazen religiously, but the fury building it gives is not enough to make a difference in the long run. It's just not enough, and gives you awkward numbers to your fury building, as it's usually 1 fury short of getting you to 30 fury. Not only that, but the passive healing you receive from Thirst for Rage more than makes up the 2% damage reduction Brazen gives you. If you feel Brazen is more useful, by all means continue to use it, but Thirst for Rage is better in my opinion. Never take Interceptor. Basic slow is not worth losing passive healing or a damage reduction. As a side note, the passive healing from Thirst for Rage occurs no matter what, every time you use an ability that consumes rage, even if you have an ability that makes the consumption costless or refunded. It also gives you 12 rage when you activate Bloodthirst. And that will wrap up our skill tree. Let's go ahead and hop over to the dummy and start looking at our rotation. Also, real quick, if you ever are seeing your alacrity at some really high number, go ahead, talk to that little droid and buy the Training Dummy Advanced Health Modulator, apply it to the dummy, and it will reset your alacrity to the correct number. Or if your crit's wrong or whatever, just do that. It will reset you because it's doing that is essentially walking into a nightmare mode raid, and it will reset you. So just something very useful to know and help reset your numbers. So that way, if you need to make a tweak, you can make your tweak without being like, why am I at 17, 20% alacrity? What the hell? So, moving on to our rotation, the biggest hurdle for anyone that's new, I know veterans, you want me to just get straight into the rotation, but this is important. There are going to be a lot of people that are new watching this, so I gotta go over this. But the biggest hurdle that you're going to face is understanding the concept of fillers, which is 90% of what we're doing here. Pretty much in short, fillers just means activating an ability while waiting for specific abilities to come off cooldown. So if I go ahead and activate Force Rend here, I now need to build up my Fury, my Rage, and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's my Fury, this is my Rage. And I'm doing all of that waiting for Force Rend to come off cooldown. Because my main thing that I want to be doing is hitting Berserk and then Force Rend to get the 40k to 50k if it crits damage that it does. Those are my guaranteed. That's guaranteed going to happen every time I do Berserk and Force Rend. So everything we're doing is built around Berserk and Force Rend. Okay, and filler literally just means doing any ability. We need to make wise decisions for filler because we do have to create a balance of Fury and Rage building, but that's all it means, okay? So that if you hear me say filler, that is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about do an ability. A lot of the time, it's going to just be Vicious Slash, okay? That is what I mean, all right? So that's a very rudimentary rundown of filler for you. And I've done a whole video that goes more in depth about which abilities are considered filler. You should be seeing somewhere on your screen, probably in the top left-hand corner or top right-hand corner, my video for that. So go check that out if you need a better understanding of what filler is. I do think I did a pretty good job in that video. But what we want, there's two things we want to be doing first. I know, you want to just straight into it, but you want to use your Channel Hatred. You can also use any of these little stuff here. All of these heal you while you're not in combat, and let's say I only had 50% health. If I activate these, I would start healing, but we actually have a passive that when we're doing this, when we're using Channel Hatred or any of these, we build our Fury, which that now allows us to use Berserk or Bloodthirst. And we do have to choose one or the other. If I activate Bloodthirst or I activate Berserk, this 30 stack you're seeing here will be eaten up, it'll go away, and instead I'll either gain my Bloodthirst buff or I'll gain my Berserk stacks, which you get 6 of. And for us, for Annihilation Marauders, because this is something all Marauders do, it increases the critical chance of our bleed attacks by 100% and cause the bleed damage we deal to heal 1% of the max health of our group. So let's say I was in a flashpoint, and I have 3 other group members, I will heal them for 1% of their maximum health for all of my dots that eat up a Berserk stack. So they'll get like 4k health if they have 400k health. So that is also really, really freaking nice. Just a little added thing. There are some fights where you need to be removed out of frames because it will mess things up or get someone killed. So you do want to learn which fights those are. Eternity Vault, the Infernal Council, and the Dread Guards in Terror from Beyond. You do not want to be grouped with certain people or at all. So, and it's only to the 3 people in your group. So it is not a raid-wide thing. It's only to the 3 people that you're grouped up with. Alternatively, you can also use Frenzy to instantaneously get you your 30 stack here. That will also help you out. We will be using this very early on in the rotation. Boom, there you go. It is helpful. And then our abilities that build us Fury, we have quite a few of them. They are Deadly Saber, Annihilate, Force Rend, Rupture, Vicious Slash, Vicious Throw, Sweeping Slash, and Smash. And then the other thing, this is pre-battle. So you before a battle starts, you want to be doing this Channel Hatred. You can also refresh it if you Channel Hatred again. Once it reaches about 15 seconds on this minute cooldown. You do want to do that. You need to keep your stacks of Fury. As you can see, it's not generating anything right now because I can't refresh it until it only has like 30 seconds left. But we can also, and you can use any of these to do this. So all these fun toys, you can use to refresh our stacks here. So if you ever see a Marauder just healing away, even though they have full health, this is what they're actually doing. Now, the other side of this, the other thing you want to do pre-battle is go get this tactical, Hidden Power, and put it on your bars, kind of like I have here. I also suggest hotkeying them, because if we open this up, as you can see right now I have Spiteful Saber on. If I hit S5, I now have Hidden Power. And when we use Force Camo, while we have Hidden Power active, it will generate us 2 rage per second, which Force Camo is a 6-second. It lasts for 6 seconds. And when I activate it, while I have it, boom, I get 2 rage. It's a little off. It's okay that went away, because you are almost always losing rage stacks. So you'll see that sometimes. It's fine. But now I can go into a battle. I already have my rage built, and I'm all set. The only thing is I got to make sure that I swap back to Spiteful Saber. That's very important. Do not go into a fight without Spiteful Saber. So I highly suggest practice hitting your Hidden Power, your Force Camo, and then Spiteful Saber 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Practice that. There have been plenty of times where I've gone into a fight where I don't have Spiteful Saber and I now have to use Rupture all the time. Because I'm reapplying I have to reapply my stack of Rupture. I don't want to do that. I have abilities that refreshen Rupture when I have Spiteful Saber. We did have another tactical that we could use along with Predation to reset Force Camo. That has been changed, and we can no longer use it, so I'm not even going to mention it to you guys or what it was. These are just very, very, very useful because we need rage. We need to be angry. So that way, in our opener, we don't have to build any rage. We don't have to waste any time. We can go straight to Annihilate. Hit them really hard. Rupture. There's just so much we can do right off the bat if we have all this rage pre-built. You do need to time this correctly. Typically, any good raid group will give a countdown before pull. I typically do this when we get a ready check, because typically we'll go into a countdown just before. So I will build during the ready check, and you will lose some rage, but we'll be able to just leap in with force charge. This just generate us quite a bit of rage. It builds us 3 rage. So you can kind of make up a bit of the lost rage. It's fine. You don't have to worry about it. Okay? But you need to time this well, because if, conversation continues on after the ready check, you're gonna have to do this again, which you have a 40-second cooldown timer now. So we used to be able to remove this, and now we can't. So it sucks. And then just generic information: Battering Assault, Force Rend, Assault, and Ravage if you're using Overwhelming Slashes all build you rage. Those are your rage builders. Of course, also any of your melee attacks, thanks to Dispatch, if they critically hit, or your weapon attacks critically hit, they will also generate you 1 rage, and once every 3 seconds. So Ravage can still also generate you rage off of that, potentially. If you're using Overwhelming Slashes, guaranteed. So this just depends on your choices there. But primarily Battering Assault, Force Rend, and Assault. Sometimes Dual Saber Throw as well will generate you some rage as well, but don't rely on that. If you're not using Overwhelming Slashes, don't rely on this either. So let's actually get into it. Now, typically you are going to start off with Force Charge, but I'm going to skip that step since I don't need to Force Leap in. We are going to start off with Berserk in our Adrenal, followed by Annihilate and Rupture. From that point, hit Frenzy, which you can activate Frenzy at any point after activating Berserk. We are then going to use Deadly Saber, Ravage. Our Dual Saber is procced, go into Berserk, and Force Rend. And that is our opener, okay? That is how we are going to start things off. It's going to be Berserk, our Adrenal, Annihilate, Rupture, Frenzy, which again, you can go Berserk, Frenzy, just so that way you don't forget about it if you really want to. You can literally throw this in at any point, as long as you do it before this Ravage. Okay? And then, so Rupture, we're going to go Deadly Saber, hit the Ravage, hit the, we've got Frenzy off. We're now going to hit Berserk. That's going to refresh in our stacks to go back to 6. And then this is, after this Ravage is where we're going to see our first filler. Because when I do all of this stuff, and I'm just going to show you real quick, and hopefully it doesn't proc. And I'm just going to build a little bit of rage here. I don't truly need this right now, but just to show you guys. Boom. Okay, it procced. That's not always going to happen. So when it doesn't happen, you now have a choice. After the Ravage, you're going to use Vicious Slash. It's just so you know, it's going to be Vicious Slash. It's your most hard-hitting attack in that moment. If the Dual Saber Throw isn't procced, you always want to use Dual Saber Throw when it's procced. So you'll use Vicious Slash, but you have a choice here. This is our first instance of filler. This is what filler is. You have a choice. If you really wanted to, you could use Battering Assault. You could use Assault. You don't have to use Vicious Slash. If you feel like you're low on rage, by all means, use Battering Assault here. I don't fully suggest it, because you're going to use Force Rend, which is also going to generate you rage. But you could use Assault. You could use another Rupture if you wanted to. I highly recommend Vicious Slash or a procced, that's when it's glowing gold, Dual Saber Throw. That is what filler is. That is 90% of what we're doing, is making a choice between abilities while I'm waiting for Berserk and Force Rend to be active, which we already had it all active in that moment. So after the Ravage, you want to use a procced Dual Saber Throw or a Vicious Slash, followed by the Force Rend. Okay, that is our opener, and you should be seeing it right there laid out in front of you. That's our first instance of filler. All right, and this is the only sequence in that we're gonna see this line. It's just our opener, and we're not gonna see it again at all. Okay, this only happens when you're opening combat. So after that initial use of Force Rend, we will be going into our rotation block, which is going to be 5 filler, Deadly Saber, a filler, Berserk, a filler, and end with Force Rend. And we're going to repeat this over and over and over and over and over again. This is what we're doing. Quite literally, all we are doing the whole fight. This is all you have to do. Is 5 filler, a Deadly Saber, a filler, Berserk, a filler, Force Rend. Easy. All right? You do need to have the right stuff, but once you get into that role, you're set. However, the caveat here is you have to make the correct decisions. And they're split-second decisions. This is what makes Annihilation so hard to use. You got to choose between something that builds you rage and something that generates you fury. So I'm going to kind of go through the opener again, and I'm going to go through the rotational block and kind of show you what I'm talking about. Let me just get all this stuff built up. So I'm going in here. Dual Saber procced, so I used it. Boom. Now I'm in filler. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my Dual Saber Throw, a filler, a Berserk, a filler, Force Rend. That is the rotation. Everything we're doing in a nutshell, okay? And you can do all of that within Force Rend's cooldown, all right? Typically, you won't be able to start generating Fury again until about 8 seconds remaining on Force Rend's cooldown, which means that's a really good time to use an ability that builds you Rage, or doesn't build you Rage, but kind of doesn't eat up Rage either, like Ravage or Dual Saber Throw. After you use the Deadly Saber is a good time to use an ability that builds you Rage. Those are the times you kind of want to build Rage. Sometimes you'll have Annihilate available, which we'll be talking about Annihilate more specifically later on. For now, I kind of want to just get through more of the rotation with you guys. You'll be able to use abilities that do eat up Rage, but it's okay because you'll have stuff like Battering Assault or Ravage or Dual Saber Throw to either not eat up Rage or generate you Rage. Okay, and that's what it's about. It's making those smart decisions. There are plenty of times where I've chosen, I got scared that I wouldn't, have Rage. And so I went for a Rage builder when I really needed to go for a Fury builder and got into that 30 stack, then built the Rage. It would have been fine. I would have been okay. So that is what you need to make that distinction. And it's going to take time and practice. So definitely come up to your dummy. Definitely practice this out, okay? But more or less, what you're seeing on your screen now above my head here, roughly here-ish, that is what we're doing. And just to, kind of reiterate, when we were talking about Bleeding Center before, this does kind of take out some of the aggravation here. And I'm going to show you real quick what using Bleeding Center looks like. I personally, I don't like it because, as I told you before, I tend to pop Berserk too soon because when it's ready, it's just ingrained, use it. And so it's a personal issue of mine, and so definitely make sure that you're building that discipline to use it when you need it, which I'm going to try and aim for 2.8 2.5 seconds remaining to pop Berserk here once we get into the main rotation. Perfect. And there's the not procced Dual Saber, so I want the Vicious Slash. And take a look at my Fury. It's being built up way faster. Right? Because Bleeding Center is building me Rage. Or building me Fury, my bad. Boom. And it will a lot of the time work out where, it's not going to be ahead. And the main reason why you don't want to pop it early, and I'll show you here once I get it built. Boom. I only had one stack of Berserk. There's a very real potential that it would have gotten eaten up before I was able to use Force Rend. And when I don't have Fury, or when I don't have Berserk active, right? 8k hit. Times that by 4. That's a lot more damage. So it's on the initial hit. Force Rend does do an initial hit of damage. So that is why you want to make sure these are correctly built up. And I don't have Star Parts active, and I don't care to have it active at the moment. But there is a damage reduction there. So if you are struggling with building Fury and making those split seconds decisions, you have Bleeding Center. I highly suggest stick with Blood Fury. Push yourself, learn it. Takes time. But when you are just in those bad situations, when you have when you don't need Bleeding Center, when you need to do more damage, and you want to swap to Bleeding Center or Furious Power, you're gonna have issues generating Fury. You're not gonna be used to it. I really didn't have to think about building Fury as much just now as I normally do. But if you do it the harder way, then the easier way is even easier. And if you are in a situation where you can't use it, you're set. So definitely practice and learn how to build your Rage on your own, then use Bleeding Center to help you out. Okay? That is literally what makes Annihilation one of the hardest specs to use. Also, if you are an experienced Marauder, you're probably wondering, okay, but what if I need to start off a fight with Bloodthirst? That's pretty simple. Just don't use the first Berserk. Because all this Berserk is really doing, especially for the way that I'm showing you, it's just making the first Rupture critically hit. That's all it's primarily doing. And if you are going to start off Bloodthirst, you don't need to use Hidden Power or Forced Camo, because you should be using Thirst for Rage as I've recommended. If you want to use Brazen, again, use it, Thirst for Rage. That'll generate all of your rage then and there. Bloodthirst, Frenzy, your Draenal, Annihilate, Rupture, Deadly Saber, Ravage, Berserk, your filler, and then Force Rend. That is what you'll start off with if you need to use Bloodthirst in the start. As a rule of thumb, don't use Dual Saber Throw to start off with Deadly Saber. Deadly Saber, boom, applied stack. I wasn't quick on it. Hold on, give me a sec. I'm waiting for Dual Saber to be available again. Be a little bit quicker. I used another ability. I didn't build my second stack of Dual Saber or Deadly Saber when I used that Annihilate. You always want to get 2 stacks on before you use Force Rend. If you use Dual Saber Throw immediately after Deadly Saber, it creates this lag time. And you wouldn't think that this would matter, but it does. You want to use anything else besides Dual Saber Throw as your first, to apply your first use of Deadly Saber. You can use it as your second, that's fine. Typically, you're going to be using Force Rend immediately after, which is going to kind of make up that missed GCD. And then you can apply the third application of Deadly Saber with another ability. That's pretty much how you want to go about it. So second or third is where you want to use Dual Saber Throw to apply your Deadly Saber. Never as your first application of Deadly Saber, because it creates that, and there's just this lag, and it does mess with your numbers. As for Annihilate, you should use it as soon as it comes off cooldown. Typically, this will happen just before or just after Force Rend, but sometimes it will be available during your 5 filler block. Just use it. Don't try and save it for specifically before or after Force Rend, because it does apply a passive buff called Davis Wounds, which makes your bleeds hit for 3% more damage. But it's only a 4-second thing, and again, you don't want to be waiting to use Annihilate, because it is going to affect your parse, it is going to affect your damage. Get it in there. Just pop it off, okay? If you really want to, you can try and put it in a specific spot, but just use it, because you're going to be messing with its cooldown quite a bit. You do reduce its cooldown as you fight, and it will mess with it. If you look at the description there, each use of this ability grants Annihilator for 30 seconds, lowering the cooldown of your next Annihilate by 1.5 seconds, stacks up to 3 times. So you're going to be messing with this quite a bit, and it makes it hard to have it in a specific spot. And then Ravage is kind of just thrown in when I think I'll use up too much rage, or I'm hoping to build it. It'll build me rage, which that's a gamble. I don't often use overwhelming slashes for Annihilation, so it isn't always building me rage, but I'll use it when I need to conserve rage, because it won't eat rage either, which is pretty nice. And maybe it'll build me some rage. It also helped me, like, okay, I can do a Ravage, conserve my rage for my abilities that will build me Fury, because I need to build Fury right now. So that's typically how I'll use it, and when I use it is typically when I reach my 30 stack of Fury, as it's a nice ability to use to apply Deadly Saber, or just after Force Rend. Those are the typical times you'll see me use Ravage. A lot of the time you'll notice that I don't use Ravage, because it's not really doing much for me. And then kind of the last little note before I do a full parse on the dummy here, just to kind of show you guys what you can expect full range of attacks looks like with Annihilation. It is just how Vicious Throw works. The last line, only usable on targets at or below 30% max health. That's a lie. It is never at 30%. Ever. I have never once attacked a target that was at 30% health and I was able to use Vicious Throw. It is 29% health that you can start using Vicious Throw. It is a 1% difference, and in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. But if you're thinking, if you've been wondering, this target's at 30% and it's taking a second to kind of get the health down, why can't I use my Vicious Throw? That's why. Also, make sure once you are able to start using Vicious Throw that you integrate it. Pretty much treat it like a Vicious Slash. It's more powerful than a Vicious Slash. Make sure that you are using it, okay? If you want the Dispatcher buff from our implant, which is activated on Dual Saber Throw, you can hold off on using Dual Saber Throw to get that active and for your Vicious Throw. Do not save your Vicious Throw in waiting for a Dual Saber Throw to proc, because it may take time. I've gone through rotations where it took 1 or 2 rotational circles for Dual Saber Throw to proc, because it is, it procs on like a 50% chance of your bleeds. So it sometimes you just have bad luck and it just doesn't proc for a while. You can save a proc Dual Saber Throw for Vicious Throw. Do not save Vicious Throw for a proc Dual Saber Throw, okay? And that's pretty much it for the nuances that I have for you right now. So I'm going to go ahead, do a test parse real fast for you guys, and then we'll wrap up and get you on out of here. All right, and that is it for Annihilation, guys. At least for the most part. There's still some nuances that I didn't fully cover, mainly because you got to practice it, right? You got to try it over and over and over and over again. I was actually kind of happy because I did make mistakes here. I did, I chose a rage building move when I should have done a fury building move. I did a fury building move when I should have done a rage building move. Sure, even someone that's been doing this for a few years now can still struggle. So as you saw, I actually built my parse all the way up into 32K. It's not my best, but it built up because I corrected myself and did the things that I needed to do. And one of those things that you saw me do is just another one of those nuances was I only had one stack of Deadly Saber on the dummy, and I could have used Force Rend at that point. However, I took the time to just wait, use an extra GCD, get the double stack, then I went in for Force Rend. Okay, and that kind of kept me on parse. It kept everything kind of like in line with one another with the cooldowns and what I wanted them to be doing, and it allowed me to make that adjustment so that way it would cleanly be 2 Deadly Sabers on the target. It's a very great class. Yeah, I've had so much fun just trying to master it because it is a challenge. A lot of people think you can just start using Annihilation. You can't, because it's those little nuances that you need to know, that you need to understand. That choice between, do I build Fury, do I build Rage? And it was a pretty good parse there. Like I said, it's not my best, but it's still a pretty decent time there as well. 3 minutes 20 seconds to get a kill and deal 6.5 million damage. That's very, very good. And it takes practice. You'll get there. Gear matters too. I'm going to do more damage in 340 gear than I would in 330 gear. And so, it matters, but definitely getting your rotation down matters more. And you got to make those split-second decisions, and you got to get good at it if you want to be a successful Annihilation Marauder. So yeah, it's good times all around. If you stuck around this long and enjoyed this video, please consider dropping a like and a comment, letting me know. Also, make sure to subscribe for future videos like this one. I am planning to branch out to other classes. The next one is going to be Juggernaut Vengeance, just to see how I do. I'm not going to claim to be a master of Vengeance. I think I'm probably off the leaderboard right now. I haven't checked in a minute. But when I was just barely on it. But it's a pretty good class to use. I have a gearing guide that is in the works. Hopefully I'll get that out soon for all of you. There's gonna be some links that I'm gonna provide in that video, show you where I got my information from, and all of that great stuff. So definitely make sure to subscribe for more of these awesome videos. I am gonna get out of here, guys. If you stuck around, greatly appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.